some creature out of time was hovering over us, more than 1,000,000 years old.
Okay, so this is the start of Rocket Summer. I'm going to do this as a vlog form again, like I did with Horror Mayhem. I'm going to try and find some interesting locations, and as the start of the month, I'm starting with At the Earth's Core by Edgar Rice Burroughs. So I can't say a lot more because I haven't started it yet, but this is how I'm starting the month. At the Earth's Core. Happy reading, Rocket Summer. Come on! Woo! So doing a vlog is all about different locations. I'm doing this in the hospital. I went to visit my mum. At the Earth's Core. Interesting book. Kind of similar in tone, unsurprisingly, to Princess of Mars. But yeah, I enjoyed it. And it wasn't amazing, but I think Princess of Mars is much better. I think there's much more going on, much more inventiveness in it. But yeah, that sort of thing's got a bit of a style to it that I think is quite consistent with like Conan Doyle's Lost World, and it is a Lost World kind of style of novel. But yeah, it was quite good. At the Earth's Core, my first book in Rocket Summer. Hello, so I want to talk a little bit more about At the Earth's Core by Edgar Rice Burroughs. So it came out in 1914, so at the turn of the century, if you like. It's definitely got characteristics, I think, that really reinforces that. I've previously read two of the John Carter books, the Barsoom books, Princess of Mars and God of Mars. So this is my third Edgar Rice Burroughs book. And I think it's interesting that, so this is a Lost World book, so it's like a side genre of fantasy and science fiction where there's like another world that these explorers discover. And it was really popular at the time. So there were several Lost World books before this one. And around the same time, Arthur Conan Doyle's book called The Lost World came out. But this one presupposes that if you drill through the crust of the earth, you get to an inner world with huge lakes and forests and an internal sun and loads of tribes. And I think it's interesting that just like the Barsoom books, and presumably the Tarzan books as well, Edgar Rice Burroughs likes talking about tribal conflict and tribal wars, and looks at it from a kind of wealthy Western kind of outsider perspective. And refers to some of the people in some of the tribes in this Lost World as savages, and I think it's quite interesting the way he approaches it. I don't think he's really condescending in this. It's weird because he talks about the noble savage, but he also talks about them in a really respectful kind of, I think they are victims of circumstance kind of way, which I find really interesting. But one of the awesome things about this is a commemorative edition, and the format is really interesting. So the way that the formatting of the book works, it's really like got massive margins, which I think I quite like, and I like the font and as well. So I like the way it's laid out. My own books have had criticism for their formatting, so it's interesting that this is slightly different, but there's really cool illustrations throughout the book as well. And there's loads of weird creatures in it, and loads of different tribes again. Lots of beautiful women. And yeah, it's there's lots of things that are consistent with the other, with the John Carter books. So there's this sort of style that you can expect to find with Edgar Rice Burroughs, it seems, which is quite interesting. But yeah, the kind of the voice and experience and subjective perspective of colonialism and discovering new lands and seeing this sort of other, the kind of stuff that Edward Said talked about in the Orientalism book, where it's all about that preoccupation in this time of the turn of the century, going into the 20th century, of the sort of the Orient or the alien kind of cultures, and you do get a bit of that here, which I think is really interesting. So yeah, I quite enjoyed it. So as it's a nice day, I thought I'd film outdoors. I'm downtown, so that's the Guildhall, and shopping precincts over there. That's the train station. And anyway, I'm now reading The Clockwork Man by E.V. Odell. This is from 1923. It's about a clockwork man that comes from the future, and so far freaks out a bunch of cricketers. But I'm enjoying it. 1923, Clockwork Man. So, another entry into the Rocket Summer vlog, the first one. I realised actually while I was doing this that there's a big chunk of July where I'm not even around, so I don't know how much vlogging I'll do because I'll be in New Orleans and I want to really do some sort of vlog there really. But anyway, I'll worry about that as the month goes on. So I was reading this, The Clockwork Man by E.V. Odell. This is the only book they wrote, so the only book that they published, which I think is really fascinating. So anyway, I really like this. I thought it was really good. It's part of a series called the Radium Age series. And these are old science fiction books that they've brought back by this particular company. Yeah, I'm definitely going to read more of them. It's quite entertaining. It's quite funny, but it's also very... it's written with a joy of language as well, so it's not like really basically written, and because at the time I think that's how they all wrote really. In 1926 this was written, I think it was 1923, so this was written in 1923, yeah. Anyway, it's got quite an interesting flavour to it. It's kind of comedic but very light in its comedy. It's not outright comedy, but it's just very light in its tone, I guess. And it's almost farcical at the beginning, and it's lots of posh people being shocked by this strange man that's just appeared and does really weird things. But then as it goes on, the Clockwork Man is clearly very stressed and wants to go back, or wants to be fixed because his clock is funny. And the idea is that this Clockwork Man has come from the future, this quite dystopian future, as far as what they've done to man. They've made men into clockwork men to stop all the fighting and the wars and all that sort of stuff, which is a really interesting idea. And part of the future, part of the clock that they have, is that they connect that time doesn't exist in the same way it does for us. It's not linear anymore in this future world, and because his clock is faulty, he's traveled back in time. Yeah, it's not sort of scientifically vigorous, but then I don't necessarily like my science fiction scientifically vigorous anyway. And I really enjoyed it. It felt really English. It felt very of its time, in the sense that I was kind of imagining like Will Hay films and the sort of like the Normal Wisdom kind of thing, which is later, but that sort of old-fashioned Englishness. I was kind of picturing that as I was reading it, so I was almost reading it in black and white, and then it kind of changes tone halfway through, but that's because you find out more about the world building at the end. Although the world building, I was shocked that a lot of the world building happens right at the end. So you've read most of the book before there's more information about the future that the Clockwork Man comes from. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really cool. So I definitely recommend this, Clockwork Orange, The Clockwork Man, written by E.V. Odell, the only book that he wrote, which is just bizarre. So yeah. If what I've said intrigues you, it's a really good book. It's a lot of fun. Okay, so this is the last part of the first Rocket Summer vlog. And I want to finish it here because I want to try and make another one before I go on a holiday. So it's got to be a little stretch of time so I can read a few stories and see how it goes. But it's been a good start to Rocket Summer, I've got to say. And I've decided to end this first vlog with a story from this fantastic, enormous collection, the Time Travel's Almanac. So I've said before I'm going to look at this in more detail. And someone suggested I do like take it story by story, which I could do. So what I might do is maybe group them into 3 to make more of a video. In which case, this first one I read will be repeated again in another video where I talk about a couple of others as well. But it's quite cool because basically I've read the first ever time travel story by Edward Page Mitchell, and it's from 1881, and it's called The Clock That Went Backwards. The Clock That Went Backwards. Can't quite find it yet, but yeah, it's came out in 1881, which is over a decade before H.G. Wells' The Time Machine, which I think is really interesting. It's not very similar to The Time Machine. So The Time Machine came out in 1895. But yeah, 1881, this story came out, the Clock That Went Backward. And it's very short. It's quite philosophical. You've got these 2 brothers that inherit this grandfather clock. And it's the clock that is the titular clock in the title. It goes backwards. And they get it from their aunt who dies. But she dies operating the clock. And they start investigating the clock. And then they find themselves going back in time. And it's quite poetically written. It's very surreptitiously told. It's not really obvious, and it's I thought it was really nicely written. So yeah, 1881, The Clock That Went Backwards by Edward Page Mitchell. Awesome addition to my Rocket Summer, and the earliest one I'm likely to read probably. Yeah. Thanks for watching, everyone. Keep telling me below what you've been reading for Rocket Summer. In the next vlog, there'll be a bunch of other stories. Shout out to Mark Vaughan. Thanks for watching. Stay curious.
Paint me a picture of what it's like to be